The ballroom glittered like temptation itself. Gold light spilling from chandeliers, laughter bouncing off glass, and every polished surface reflecting Andre's perfect life. He stood at the center, charm wrapped around him like armor, his hand resting on Marisol's shoulder as though the world belonged to him again. To them. And then, the doors opened. A hush rippled through the crowd. The string quartet faltered mid-note. 3 small voices broke the silence, clear and bright as bells. "Mommy!" The sound sliced through the noise. Every head turned. 3 children stood framed in the doorway, small, wide-eyed, holding hands. Their matching curls caught the golden light. Their honey-brown eyes glimmered with innocence. For a moment, no one breathed, and then Andre's champagne glass slipped from his hand. It shattered on marble. The sound sharp, final, echoing like judgment. The crowd gasped, because it wasn't just that the children had appeared out of nowhere, it was that they bore the same unmistakable look, the one the man at the center of the room saw every morning in the mirror. Across the hall, calm as quiet fire, Kendra rose from her seat. Her navy dress whispered as she walked forward, unhurried, regal. She knelt as the children ran into her arms, wrapping them close, the picture of peace in the eye of his storm. Her voice carried easily through the silence, gentle, controlled, deadly. "Guess some people," she said, meeting Andre's frozen stare, "just need to multiply." The room erupted into whispers, gasps, and camera flashes. Andre's jaw tightened, his perfect world tilted on its golden axis, because the secret he'd buried 6 years ago had just walked through the door, in triplicate, calling her mommy. If that moment caught your breath, hit that like button right now, because what's coming next will leave your heart racing and your soul screaming justice. Subscribe, turn on your notifications, and stay with me. Because Kendra's story isn't just about revenge, it's about rebirth, about a woman who was told she was nothing and walked back into the room as everything. Now lean in, my beautiful listeners, because the storm has only just begun. The afternoon sun spilled through the thinning clouds, catching on the wet marble steps of the Crystal Bay Hotel. It was the kind of place built for spectacle. Gold pillars, mirrored glass, and staff who smiled like they'd been trained to never blink. A black sedan slid to a stop at the entrance. The door opened slowly, deliberately, as if the moment itself were aware of its significance. Kendra stepped out. The camera follows her movement, the elegant precision in the turn of her wrist as she closes the door, the quiet authority in her stride. Her heels meet the marble with rhythmic intent, the kind of sound that makes heads lift before minds understand why. The air shifts. Even the doorman straightens, unsure if he should offer the umbrella in his hand. She doesn't take it. Her hair gleams like ink under sunlight, pinned neatly, not a strand out of place. Her navy dress moves like water when she walks, soft, composed, and untouchable. Around her wrist glints a thin gold bracelet. At her throat, a locket that catches the light with every breath. Behind her, the open car door reveals only the faintest hint of warmth. 3 small shapes beneath gray blankets, soft coos barely audible beneath the hum of city traffic. The camera lingers on that image for half a heartbeat before Kendra shuts the door gently, sealing whatever truth it holds in silence. She pauses before the revolving doors of the hotel. A valet steps forward, his practiced smile flickering under her calm gaze. "Good afternoon, ma'am. Are you here for the private event?" Kendra lifts the gold-embossed invitation from her clutch. The sunlight catches the lettering, baby shower, Andre Marisol. Her eyes trace the words as if tasting something bitter. Then, with the faintest curl of amusement at one corner of her mouth, she nods once. "Yes," she says. "I'm expected." The valet opens the door. She doesn't thank him. Inside, the world glows in champagne tones. Crystal chandeliers drip light like liquid glass. Soft piano music floats through the air, polite, expensive, hollow, The sound of laughter rises from somewhere deeper within, layered with the clink of crystal and the hush of gossip. She crosses the lobby without haste. Her reflection follows in every polished surface. A woman composed enough to be mistaken for peaceful, but whose stillness hides movement beneath the surface. Her hand smooths the front of her dress, fingertips brushing the outline of her waist as if confirming her own existence. The elevator doors part in front of her with a gentle chime. She steps inside, presses the button marked PH, Penthouse Ballroom. As the doors close, the mirrored walls hold her reflection from all sides. For a moment, she is surrounded by herself, fragments of past, present, and something new glimmering just beneath her calm. The elevator hums upward. Kendra's gaze drops to the invitation in her hand once more. Her thumb runs over the raised lettering until the ink begins to blur. A voice rises, her voice soft and distant. It layered over the hum of the elevator. He once said I was barren. Funny how lies grow faster than truth. The memory echoes faintly in the mirrored chamber, a confession swallowed by time. The lights above flicker once as if reacting to the sound. The elevator reaches its stop with a soft ding. Kendra straightens. The faintest smile tugs at her lips, quiet and dangerous like the beginning of a storm that has waited too long to break. The elevator doors opened onto the penthouse ballroom and the sound hit first. Laughter, glass, the polite hum of wealth trying to prove it was happy. The air shimmered with perfume and ambition. Chandeliers dripped light like crystal rain, scattering reflections across white tablecloths and designer gowns. Kendra stepped inside. No one noticed at first. They rarely do. Not the quiet ones, not the women who move like memory through a crowd. But the camera catches it. The subtle shift in atmosphere as heads turn one by one, a ripple of awareness moving outward from her entrance. At the far end of the room, Andre stood exactly where she knew he would, center stage beneath a canopy of gold balloons, glass in hand, smile rehearsed to perfection. He was the kind of man who built his life like a presentation slide, sharp, symmetrical, and utterly hollow behind the gloss. Beside him, Marisol glowed in the way women do when they think they've won something that was never truly a prize. Her hand rested protectively on her rounded belly, fingers adorned with the ring that once belonged to Kendra. The sight of it hit like a slow-moving wave. Not pain, not anymore. Just recognition. A chapter she'd already finished being read aloud for someone else's applause. Kendra's heels sank slightly into the plush carpet as she advanced, every step measured, precise. The chatter dimmed, thinning into a tension that smelled faintly of champagne and curiosity. Andre's eyes found her across the room. For the briefest instant, something human flashed through them. Surprise, maybe, or the sting of a ghost refusing to stay buried. Then the mask returned. That perfect, infuriating smirk, the one that once charmed investors, journalists, her. He raised his glass slightly. "You actually came," he said, voice smooth enough to slice marble. "Guess some invitations are too tempting to ignore." The crowd tittered politely, waiting for Kendra to blush or falter. But Kendra didn't blink. She let the silence stretch until it hummed. Then she tilted her head, just slightly, as if studying a man she barely recognized. "I never could resist seeing how fairy tales end," she said. The words landed like fine crystal cracking, soft but irreversible. Someone near the buffet coughed into their drink. Another laughed too loudly. Conversations that had been effortless seconds ago stumbled, their rhythm lost. Andre's smirk didn't falter, but the fingers around his glass tightened. Marisol glanced between them, uncertain. "Andre, who—" "An old friend," Andre interrupted. "From a different life." Kendra smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Different life, same lessons. Her gaze slid toward the guests, catching the attention of those pretending not to listen, though it seems some people still prefer recycled fairy tales. Andre's laugh came a little too quick, a little too sharp. Always the poet. Tell me, Kendra, do you make a habit of showing up uninvited to celebrations? I was invited, she said simply, raising the gilded card between her fingers. You made sure of that. A murmur rippled through the room. Some guests exchanged glances, that flicker of delicious discomfort that only scandal could bring. The sound of a string quartet tuning in the corner wavered, offbeat, as if the music itself hesitated to intrude. Andre's gaze sharpened. Then enjoy yourself. Drinks are on the house. She took a slow step closer. The space between them seemed to vibrate, memory and resentment thickening the air. I'll pass. I never drink to delusions. The murmurs grew louder. Someone whispered her name, half recognition dawning. Kendra, his ex-wife. And suddenly all the gold and laughter in the room felt smaller, cheaper. Andre's jaw flexed beneath the mask of charm. You're still dramatic, I see. And you're still pretending that cruelty is confidence. His eyes flickered, the briefest flash of unease. She had spoken too softly for the crowd to hear clearly, but his reaction drew their attention anyway. They didn't need to hear the words to feel the shift. The temperature of the room dropped a degree. Marisol's hand tightened around Andre's arm. Maybe we should— No, Andre said quickly, smiling at Kendra like she was a child throwing a tantrum. Let her speak. Clearly she came for attention. Kendra laughed, the sound low, clean, unhurried. Attention? No, Andre. I came for perspective. Her voice carried easily now. You always said I couldn't handle being seen, that I wasn't built for your world. Her gaze swept the glittering crowd, the photographers, the board members, the carefully curated friends. But I look around, and all I see are people who only exist when someone else is watching. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was electric. The pause before a storm decides whether to strike. Andre took a step closer, lowering his voice. You don't belong here. Her lips curved faintly. That's the beautiful thing about truth. It doesn't need permission to enter a room. He leaned in, smile fixed but voice acid soft. You always did enjoy playing the martyr. Still holding on to that same old story? She met his gaze, steady. No, Andre. I rewrote it. The line hung there, simple, devastating. Across the room, the photographer lowered his camera. The string quartet had stopped entirely now. Even the waiters, motionless at the edges, pretended to rearrange silverware just to stay close enough to witness what was unraveling. Kendra didn't move, but something in her presence had shifted. She wasn't reacting. She was directing. The energy, the silence, the crowd itself had become her stage. Andre straightened, trying to reclaim ground with a laugh that didn't quite land. You've changed. I had to, she said. You wouldn't recognize a woman who stayed broken for you. The words were almost kind, and that made them lethal. A hush fell heavier this time. Marisol's face had gone pale, her smile tight as ribbon. A nearby guest whispered something that sounded like, God. She's magnificent. Andre raised his glass again, hiding behind the movement. To closure, he said, forcing lightness. Kendra's gaze followed the glass as he drank. Closure, she echoed, her tone almost gentle. You mistake that for consequence. Andre's smirk faltered. The first real crack. It was small, but everyone saw it. Someone turned to whisper. Another began tapping a message on their phone. The room had changed sides without even realizing it. Kendra inclined her head slightly. Enjoy your celebration, Andre. Her voice softened, almost tender. I hope you remember this moment. It's the last time a room will ever look at you with admiration. She turned before he could answer, her heels whispering across the marble. The crowd parted instinctively, as though guided by gravity. Behind her, Andre stood still, glass suspended halfway to his lips, the smile gone completely. For the first time in his carefully orchestrated life, He wasn't the one commanding attention. He was the one everyone was quietly studying, wondering what truth had just slipped through the cracks. Kendra paused at the door, glancing back only once. The chandeliers above him flickered, their light fracturing over his reflection in the champagne flutes. Scattered, distorted, already fading. Her voice lingered in the silence, more echo than sound. Fairy tales always end when the illusion breaks. Then she was gone, swallowed by the golden corridor, leaving behind a ballroom that no longer glittered, only shimmered nervously in the aftershock of her calm. The camera follows her into the hall. Her pace is steady, her shoulders unbowed. The invitation flutters from her hand into a nearby trash bin, gold edges catching the light one last time before disappearing into shadow. Inside, Andre's laughter returned. Brittle, forced. The orchestra resumed, but the melody was crooked now, off-key, as though even the music knew something had shifted. And somewhere deep within that echoing room, a truth had begun to breathe again. The champagne shimmered like liquid gold beneath the chandeliers. Laughter, sharp, bright, rehearsed, spilled over the edge of the conversation pit where Andre's friends gathered like royalty in exile. The scent of roses and ego clung to everything, and Kendra stood in the middle of it, unforgettable, untouchable. The whispers began the way storms do, quietly at the edges of things. Is that her? The ex-wife? The one who couldn't, you know? A woman in a blush silk gown glanced over her glass, her smile painted on like armor. Well, that explains why he moved on so fast, she whispered to another. A man like Andre deserves a legacy. The words were meant to sting. They did not. Kendra didn't flinch. She moved through the crowd with the same grace as before, head held high, every step deliberate. Her fingers brushed over the rim of her champagne flute, the bubbles catching light like tiny suns. She had once thought these people were her friends, polite smiles at dinner parties, gentle advice at charity galas, the kind of empathy that vanished the moment the doctor said the word infertility. Now they circled her like vultures wrapped in silk. Andre's voice cut through the hum of curiosity, warm and commanding. Everyone, this is Kendra. He said her name like a dare. My first great lesson in love. Laughter rippled, thin, uncertain. She turned slowly, her eyes locking on his. And my first great lesson in survival, she said. The air faltered. Champagne froze midair in crystal flutes. Andre smiled, unbothered, or pretending to be. Always so poetic, he said. Still chasing metaphors instead of reality, I see. She took a sip of champagne, savoring the quiet rebellion and doing nothing at all. Reality has a way of catching up, doesn't it? Marisol touched Andre's arm, whispering something too soft to catch. Her diamond bracelet flashed, the same one Kendra had chosen once from a Paris boutique. How convenient that it fit another woman's wrist so easily. A voice from the crowd, female, sweet as venom, cut through the tension. Kendra, dear, she cooed. It's been years. Tell us, did life finally bless you with little ones? The question landed like a slap dressed as kindness. Heads turned. Some smiled in sympathy. Others leaned forward, hungry for blood. Kendra's lashes lowered, concealing the spark that lit behind them. Not yet, she said softly, voice smooth as satin. But life has a funny sense of timing. A man near the bar chuckled under his breath. Maybe some dreams just aren't meant for everyone. Andre's lips curved, pleased, indulgent. Don't be cruel, darling, he said to the man beside him, though he made sure everyone could hear. She tried her best. Some things are simply beyond control. Laughter rippled again, sharper this time, like glass cracking under heat. Kendra turned toward him fully now. The light hit her face just right, half gold, half shadow. You're right, she said. Some things are beyond control. Her gaze held his, unflinching. like consequences. He blinked, momentarily caught off guard. She smiled faintly, tilting her glass. Enjoy the celebration, Andre. I hear miracles are contagious. She drifted away before he could answer, leaving him standing amid laughter that no longer sounded quite as secure. Outside, the terrace waited. Open sky, cool air, and the sea stretching out like a mirror to the horizon. The sun was lowering, bleeding amber across the water. Kendra stepped into the quiet, letting the noise of the ballroom fall behind her like a door closing on an old life. She breathed deeply. The salt in the air felt cleaner than the perfume inside. Her reflection shimmered faintly in the glass wall beside her, elegant, unbowed, the woman Andre had tried to erase. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then she reached into her clutch, pulling out a small photograph creased at the edges. 3 faces smiled up at her, bright, unfiltered joy in matching white shirts. A boy and 2 girls, their laughter frozen mid-giggle. The camera had caught sunlight in their hair, turning it to gold. Her fingertips traced their outlines gently, reverently. "They'll see soon enough," she whispered. A gust of wind lifted her hair, carrying the words into the evening like a promise. Behind her, the sliding doors opened. Footsteps. Andre's voice again, lower now, stripped of charm. "You always did love your dramatics. Slipping away for attention?" She didn't turn. "You mistake peace for performance." He came closer, his reflection appearing beside hers in the glass. "Peace?" He laughed under his breath. "You call showing up here peace?" She faced him then, eyes steady. "You invited me. You wanted a show. I'm just giving you what you asked for." His smile wavered. "You're angry, that's all. I understand." "You understand nothing," she said quietly. "Anger is what happens when you still care. I don't." He studied her, the practiced calm on his face starting to strain. "You've changed." Kendra's lips curved. "No. You just never looked closely enough to see who I was becoming." She brushed past him, heading back toward the ballroom. "Enjoy your illusions, Andre. You'll need them." He watched her go, a flicker of unease crossing his features. Something in her tone, too certain, too calm, made the laughter inside sound distant, hollow. Back inside, whispers followed her like perfume. "Did you hear what she said? She looks incredible, though, doesn't she? I almost feel bad for her. Almost." Kendra didn't hear them anymore. Or rather, she'd learned not to let their noise touch her. The lesson had cost her years, years of shrinking, of apology, of carrying blame that was never hers to hold. But the woman who stood here now had built herself from ashes and willpower. Every cruel word had become a brick in her foundation. Every humiliation had sharpened her grace into something that could slice through pretense. She found her seat near the edge of the ballroom, away from the noise. Her fingers brushed the photograph again inside her clutch, unseen, like a secret heartbeat. Across the room, Andre tried to laugh with someone new, but his smile didn't quite reach his eyes. He kept glancing her way, just enough for people to notice, just enough for the illusion to slip. Marisol touched his arm again, uncertain. "Are you okay?" "Fine," he said too quickly. But the crowd had begun to shift. Something invisible was tilting, just slightly, in Kendra's favor. When the next toast began, she raised her glass politely, the perfect guest. But her gaze found Andre's across the room, and the corner of her mouth lifted. This was no longer his stage. The game had begun, and he didn't even know he was already losing. Outside, the sky darkened from gold to violet. Inside, the chandeliers flickered as though sensing the storm that hadn't yet arrived, but was already in motion. Kendra turned her gaze to the horizon through the ballroom windows. The reflection in the glass caught her face, serene, luminous, unreadable, and in her eyes, a quiet prophecy burned. Not revenge, not hatred, something far stronger. the calm before revelation. And though no one knew it yet, by the time the night was over, every whisper in that room would change. Because truth, like dawn, cannot be delayed forever. The music faltered just as dessert was being served. A single wrong note from the violin trembled through the air, an omen disguised as sound. Guests paused mid-laughter, glancing toward the stage as if the evening itself had lost its rhythm. Kendra sat quietly at the edge of the ballroom, her champagne untouched, her gaze fixed on the golden double doors at the far end. To anyone watching, she looked serene, just another well-dressed guest absorbing the hum of the celebration. But inside, her heartbeat was a slow drum of purpose, counting down to something inevitable. Andre had been trying too hard. Every laugh, every story, every arm around Marisol's waist screamed performance. The man who had once prided himself on effortless control now looked like someone balancing a life made of glass. Marisol, glowing and uncertain, had spent the last half hour whispering to him in confusion. "Why does she keep smiling like that?" she'd asked. Andre hadn't answered. He'd only followed Kendra's calm with his eyes, as if waiting for her to break the unspoken truce between them. But she didn't break it. She didn't need to. The universe had already decided to do it for her. It began quietly. The faint squeak of hinges, the golden doors at the back of the hall, once shut, now slowly swinging open. The sound was so small, yet it sliced through the chatter like a bell at a funeral. Heads turned. Conversation stopped mid-sentence. 3 small figures stood framed in the doorway, haloed by the soft afternoon light pouring in from the corridor behind them. 3 children, no more than 6 years old, stood hand in hand, identical in their honey-brown eyes, the same tight curls bouncing as they stepped forward hesitantly. The room fell utterly silent. A waiter froze, tray suspended midair. Someone's fork clattered against porcelain. Whispers began, breathless and sharp. "Whose kids are those?" Oh my God, they look just like her." The camera would have caught it. The moment realization rippled through the crowd like a wave breaking over glass. Kendra turned her head slowly, almost gracefully, as though this had all been part of some elegant choreography. Her expression didn't shift. Calm. Knowing. Behind the children walked Clark, tall and composed, his hand steadying the smallest child. The crisp cut of his suit, the confident ease in his stride, and the faint smile at the corner of his mouth told a quiet truth. This entrance was no accident. The eldest child, perhaps by seconds, squeezed Clark's hand once, then spotted Kendra across the room. Her little voice pierced the silence. "Mommy!" It was a sound so pure it shattered the last of the pretense in that room. Gasps rippled, followed by the flutter of camera shutters. Andre's hand, so sure, so composed, tightened around his glass until it slipped, falling in slow motion. Champagne and crystal collided with marble, exploding into glittering fragments at his feet. The crowd parted instinctively, eyes flicking between Andre's stunned face and Kendra's rising figure. Kendra stood slowly, smoothing her dress as though the world hadn't just tilted. Her heels clicked softly across the floor as she stepped toward her children, the same children Andre had sworn she'd never have. The little boy broke into a run, laughter spilling from him like sunlight through rain. His sisters followed, curls bouncing, voices overlapping. "Mommy! Mommy, we found you!" Kendra dropped to her knees, arms opening like wings. When they collided with her, 3 tiny bodies, arms clutching, faces buried in her neck. The sound that left her lips wasn't laughter or speech. It was something older, deeper. A sigh pulled from the part of the soul that survives after ruin. The entire room watched, spellbound. Every polished surface reflected the impossible. 3 children with her eyes, her smile, her quiet strength. Clark stood a few steps behind them, folding his arms, his expression unreadable but proud. Kendra pressed soft kisses to each forehead, then looked up, straight into Andre's disbelieving gaze. "Guess some people," she said, her voice smooth as silk and sharp as justice, "just need to multiply." For a moment, time forgot how to move. The chandeliers hummed faintly, light refracting in fragile patterns over the mirrored walls. Andre's jaw clenched, his face pale beneath the expensive glow of the room. Marisol's hand slipped from his arm, confusion spreading across her face. "Andre, what's happening?" He said nothing. Couldn't. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. Kendra rose to her full height, her children gathered close to her legs, their hands clutching the fabric of her navy dress. She looked like a painting of grace, motherhood wrapped in quiet defiance, forgiveness carved into every motion. Whispers erupted again, louder this time. "I thought she couldn't have kids." Didn't he say, "Those eyes, they're his"? Kendra turned toward the murmuring crowd, her smile soft but dangerous. "It's amazing," she said calmly, "how quickly people build myths when they're too afraid of the truth." Andre took a single step forward, his voice trembling with disbelief. "They're yours?" Kendra met his gaze. "Of course they are." "And the father?" he demanded, his tone cracking like glass under pressure. Clark stepped forward then, his presence commanding but unthreatening. "Not that it's your concern," he said, his tone calm, even, lethal. "But I've been by Kendra's side since the day she rebuilt her life from the ashes you left behind." Someone gasped. Someone else whispered, "That's Clark, her business partner, right? The investor?" Kendra's hand found Clark's for just a second, brief, unspoken acknowledgement, before she looked back at Andre. "I told you once," she said softly, "that you mistook silence for surrender. But I was never broken, Andre. I was becoming." The words rippled through the crowd like gospel. Marisol took a step back, color draining from her face. "You said she couldn't—" Andre turned on her sharply, his voice rising. "She couldn't. The doctors. She was barren." Laughter, light and disbelieving, escaped Kendra's lips. "No, Andre. You lied. To them. To me. To yourself." Clark placed a hand on her shoulder. She didn't need it, but the gesture grounded the air between them. Kendra's gaze softened, her voice lowering to something almost tender. "You could have lived with honesty, but you chose to build your kingdom on humiliation, and now you're shocked it's crumbling beneath your feet." The children looked up at her, unaware of the history burning in the air. One tugged at her sleeve. "Mommy, can we have cake now?" Kendra smiled down at them. "Soon, baby." The simplicity of that exchange cut deeper than any accusation could. The crowd had shifted completely now. Pity and admiration replaced curiosity. The whispers no longer mocked. They marveled. Across the room, Andre's reflection stared back at him from the mirrored wall. A man stripped of illusion, standing in the ruins of his own pride. He had once imagined this day as her humiliation. Instead, it had become his unveiling. Kendra turned slightly, facing the crowd with her children at her side. "I didn't come here to prove anything," she said, her voice carrying through the stunned quiet. "I came to remind myself that truth always arrives, even if it's late." Cameras flashed again. The image would live forever. Kendra standing radiant under gold light, her children pressed close, Andre blurred and broken behind her. And somewhere deep in the silence that followed, a soft applause began. One guest, then another. Slow, hesitant at first, but growing. Andre stood frozen as the sound built around him, each clap another nail sealing the coffin of his reputation. Kendra bent to kiss the crown of her daughter's head. The little girl giggled. "Why are they clapping, Mommy?" "Because, sweetheart," Kendra whispered, her voice like silk over fire. "Sometimes the truth is beautiful enough to make people remember how to feel." The applause swelled, gentle, reverent, unstoppable. Andre's shoulders slumped. Marisol's diamond smile dimmed. And Kendra, framed by chandeliers and light and the family she was never meant to have, simply turned, gathered her children's hands, and began to walk toward a table. The ballroom had begun to breathe again, quietly, awkwardly. Laughter resumed in patches, but the air remained heavy with aftershocks. People tried to pretend the moment had passed, but it hadn't. Not for Andre. He stood rooted to the same spot, surrounded by the wreckage of his own reputation, spilled champagne, cracked glass, silence where applause used to follow him. And across the room, Kendra stood like a calm storm, her children now seated with Clark near the refreshment table, their laughter a gentle hum against the brittle air. Andre finally found the courage to move. He crossed the marble floor in slow, deliberate steps, each one louder than the last. When he stopped in front of her, the space between them felt electric, alive with everything they had never said. "Kendra," he breathed. "We need to talk." Her eyes lifted to his, calm, assessing, unreadable. "Now you want to talk?" His throat tightened. "Please." She studied him for a long, unflinching second. Then, with a small tilt of her head, she gestured toward the balcony. 5 minutes. No more. The two of them stepped out into the evening air. The glass doors slid shut behind them, muffling the murmurs from inside. The sun had fallen. The sky bled into indigo. City lights shimmered below like 1,000 eyes waiting for answers. For a while, neither spoke. The tension was its own language. Andre finally broke it. "They're yours." His voice cracked. "All three?" Kendra's arms folded across her chest. "Yes, all three." His lips parted, 1,000 thoughts fighting for release. "You got pregnant." Her eyes flicked toward him, steady and sharp. 6 years ago. He exhaled shakily, disbelief and guilt mixing into something raw. "You never told me." She let out a sound that wasn't quite a laugh. "I tried, Andre. But you'd already left. Too busy rewriting the story to make yourself the victim." He ran a trembling hand through his hair. You told the world I was barren," she said, voice low, unwavering. "You let me drown in humiliation while you played the noble husband who did everything he could." Andre's jaw clenched. "I thought you couldn't conceive. That's what the doctor said. The doctor said you needed testing." Her tone cut through the night. "You refused. You were too proud to consider it could be you. And when I found out, you left before I could say a word." He blinked. "Found out?" "I was 6 weeks pregnant when you filed for divorce." Her voice trembled just slightly, not from weakness, but from remembering the ache of it. "I sat in that cold clinic holding the test, thinking maybe it would bring you back. But your signature was already on the papers." He flinched as though struck. "I didn't know," he whispered. "You didn't want to know." The words landed like a verdict. He turned away, gripping the railing, staring down at the glittering city below. His reflection in the glass looked older now, tired, hollow, human. "I made mistakes, Kendra. I was angry, humiliated. I can't—" "You can't beg," she finished softly. He looked back at her, eyes glistening. "I can't beg. I can't face you after everything I said. My pride wouldn't let me." Kendra's expression softened, but only for a heartbeat. "Pride has a cost, Andre. You just never realized how much it would cost you." He stepped closer, voice breaking. "They're mine?" Her silence was the answer. Something inside him shattered. His shoulders slumped, his breath came unsteady. "All this time?" He laughed bitterly. 6 years? And I told everyone you couldn't—" Kendra's gaze held his. "You turned your shame into my sentence, and I served it quietly while you celebrated your new life." He dragged a hand across his face, voice hoarse. "I don't deserve to ask, but please, let me see them, talk to them." Kendra shook her head slowly. "No." The word was soft but absolute. His chest tightened. "Kendra, please. They don't know you," she said gently. And they won't. Andre's face twisted, pain raw and visible now. You can't do that. I can, she said, and I will. He took a step toward her. They're my children. And I am their mother, she replied. The one who carried them, raised them, wiped their tears, and made sure they never felt the absence you created. Her voice didn't rise, but every syllable carried weight, the quiet authority of a woman who had finally found peace and refused to give it up. Andre's voice dropped to a whisper. Kendra, I've made terrible mistakes. I was cruel. I see that now, but I can fix this. She shook her head. No, Andre. You can't fix what you abandoned. You don't get to walk back in when the pain has already raised them into laughter. He stared at her, stunned. You'd keep them from me? I'd keep them safe, she said simply. The night wind caught her hair, brushing it across her cheek like a ghost of who she used to be. Andre swallowed hard, his voice barely audible. Do they know? They know their story, she said. They know they were wanted. They know their mother fought for them. That's all they need. He stepped closer, desperate. Please, Kendra, let me. Her gaze stopped him, not angry, just final. You had your chance, she said quietly, and you traded it for your ego. He closed his eyes, the truth cutting deeper than her words. I thought you hated me. I did, she whispered. Until I realized hate still gives you power, so I let go. I built something beautiful where you left ashes. That's what love looks like now. Not for you, but for them. He looked through the glass into the ballroom, at the three small figures giggling with Clark, their laughter echoing faintly through the closed doors. For the first time in his life, Andre's eyes filled with tears. Kendra turned toward the door. Please, he said again, voice breaking. Kendra, just once. Let me see them up close. She stopped, her hand on the door handle, and looked back at him. The city light framed her face, all grace and quiet strength. You already did, she said softly, and that's all you'll ever have. She opened the door and stepped back into the golden light of the ballroom. Andre didn't follow. He stayed where he was, staring through the glass at the woman who had once been his whole world, and at the 3 lives that should have been his legacy. Inside, Kendra's children spotted her and ran into her arms again, their laughter wrapping around her like music. She smiled down at them, smoothing their hair, her voice a whisper meant only for them. Never let anyone tell you love makes you weak, she said, because it's the reason we survived. And through the glass, Andre watched, helpless, hollow, and finally, human. For the first time, he understood what true loss meant, not the loss of a marriage, but the loss of being known and never being forgiven. The Crystal Bay Hotel no longer glowed with celebration that much. It pulsed, restless, electric, uneasy. After Kendra's reveal, the party hadn't died. It had simply mutated into something else. The champagne still flowed, but every conversation carried an undertone of scandal. Laughter became whispers, compliments became questions, and Andre, once the center of admiration, was now the storm everyone watched from a safe distance. By the time the guests began leaving, the damage had already escaped the room. Someone had filmed it. Of course they had. The moment the first child shouted, "Mommy!" phones had lifted in reflex. By midnight, the videos were everywhere, hashtags multiplying faster than his PR team could erase them. The CEO and the lie, Chuck Barron no more. Andre Cruz exposed Twitter, Instagram, business blogs, all of them flooded with headlines that glimmered with poetic justice. Was Andre Cruz the problem all along? New evidence suggests CEO built empire on false narrative. Ex-wife's stunning revelation destroys Cruz brand. The internet had turned his shame into spectacle, and the world, the same world that had once worshipped his perfection, was now watching to see how far he'd fall. In the dim backstage corridor of the ballroom, the party lights faded into a single low hum. Kendra stood alone by the dressing room mirror, removing her earrings slowly. Each delicate click echoed louder than any applause. Her reflection was calm, but her pulse wasn't. She had braced herself for shock, but not for the avalanche that followed. The universe, it seemed, had decided that truth deserved amplification. She could hear the faint sound of reporters outside the glass doors, shouting questions to anyone who dared emerge. Her phone buzzed again and again. Calls from journalists, allies, even old friends who once avoided her name. She ignored them all. Behind her, the door burst open. Andre entered like a storm, barely holding itself together, jaw tight, tie loosened, hands trembling at his sides. The perfect CEO mask had cracked. All that remained was the man beneath, angry, afraid, undone. "You came here to ruin me," he said. The door slammed shut behind him. Kendra didn't turn immediately. She set down her earrings, folded her arms, and met his reflection in the mirror. "You really think I needed to?" His eyes burned through her reflection. "You embarrassed me in front of everyone I've ever known. You humiliated me." Her tone was soft. "No, Andre. I told the truth. You humiliated yourself the day you decided the truth was beneath you." He took a step closer, voice low, shaking. "Do you have any idea what you've done? My board is calling. The press. God, Kendra, this could ruin everything." She turned then, finally facing him. "Everything?" Her voice cut through the air, quiet but deadly. "You mean your image, the illusion you built from my suffering, the empire made of lies and pity." He flinched. "You don't understand what it takes to survive in my world." She smiled faintly, but it didn't reach her eyes. "No, Andre. I understand perfectly. You built your world by convincing everyone that I was broken, so they wouldn't see the cracks in you." He paced, running his hands through his hair, voice cracking. "You could have called me. We could have handled this privately." She took a step forward. "I later tried calling 6 years ago. You blocked my number." His breath hitched. Her voice softened, but the truth within it was sharp. "You didn't want privacy. You wanted silence. And silence is how abusers stay adored." The words hit him harder than a slap. He turned away, fists clenched, staring at the floor. "You don't know what it's like to have people watch your every move, waiting for you to fail." Kendra's voice was steady now, rising like tidewater. "No, Andre. You don't know what it's like to fail privately every night. To watch the man you loved call your pain a weakness." Her tone deepened, almost a whisper. "You lied to protect your reputation. I told the truth to protect my children. That's the difference between us." He looked up at her then, the arrogance gone. For the first time, there was fear in his eyes, not of her, but of what the world would now see when they looked at him. "They're calling me a monster," he whispered. "Then stop being one." The silence that followed was thick, electric. He took another step closer, his voice breaking between fury and pleading. "You can fix this, Kendra. Tell them it was a misunderstanding. Tell them it was complicated. Please." She shook her head slowly. "The truth doesn't need editing, Andre. It just needs to breathe." "You'll destroy me," he said, desperate now. She met his gaze, calm, unflinching. "No, you did that the day you traded love for reputation." He swallowed hard, his breath unsteady. "You're enjoying this." That made her laugh, low, weary, sad. "Enjoying it? Andre, this isn't revenge. It's revelation. You're just finally standing in the light you used to hide me from." He backed away, the words cutting deeper than any headline. "You don't know what the press will do to me." "I do," she said softly. "They'll strip away everything you built that wasn't real. And what's left? Maybe that's who you really are." He stared at her like a drowning man searching for shore. "And what happens to me when the world decides I'm the villain?" Kendra's voice trembled with quiet conviction. "Maybe then, for the first time, you'll understand what you did to me." He blinked rapidly, his voice raw. I didn't mean to. You didn't stop yourself either, she interrupted gently. You watched me suffer because it was convenient, and now you're suffering because it's public. The door burst open again, one of Andre's assistants, breathless, eyes wide. Sir, the reporters are outside. They've got footage, interviews, everything. It's trending on every platform. Andre spun, snapping, Get out! The door closed again, leaving him trembling. He turned back to Kendra, voice cracking. They'll destroy me. She took a breath, stepping closer until there was only inches between them. Her tone softened. Not cruel, not triumphant, just real. Maybe that's what it takes for you to understand humility. He stared at her, eyes wet, jaw tight, pride finally cracking open like glass. I loved you once. She tilted her head. You loved how I made you look. His breath hitched. She smiled sadly. And the tragedy, Andre, is that I would have loved the man beneath all that armor if you'd ever let him exist. He exhaled, defeated, whispering, What do I do now? She met his eyes, steady and kind in a way that hurt more than hate. Start with the truth. Tell them everything. Not because it'll save you, but because maybe, for once, it'll make you human. Her words hung in the air like prophecy. Behind the glass doors, the faint echo of camera flashes pulsed against the walls, a reminder that his kingdom had already been breached. Kendra turned to leave. He reached for her wrist instinctively. Kendra, please. She looked down at his hand, the same hand that once held power over her, and he released her before she had to ask. She stepped toward the door. You built your life on a lie, she said, her voice calm, resolute. And lies don't crumble. They collapse. Slowly, loudly, completely. She paused at the doorway, light spilling across her silhouette. When the storm comes, she said softly, don't call it karma. Call it consequence. Then she walked out, her figure swallowed by the corridor's golden light, leaving Andre alone, a man staring at his own ruin reflected in the mirror. And for the first time, he didn't see success. He saw a ghost of the life he could have had. Love traded for reputation, family traded for applause. Behind him, the phones kept buzzing. The headlines kept spreading. The fall had already begun. Morning rose like judgment. The city skyline gleamed pale under a bruised dawn, as if the sun itself hesitated to rise on the ruins of Andre's empire. Inside his penthouse, the world that once obeyed his command had turned against him. Phones that used to deliver praise now vibrated with panic. Screens that once displayed numbers and victory now glowed with headlines that bled red and black. Breaking. Internal documents reveal Andre Cruz's lies about ex-wife's fertility. Leaked emails expose pattern of manipulation. Investors withdraw from Cruz Innovations after scandal. Every headline was a blade, slicing away the polished illusion he'd spent years building. It began at 7:42 a.m. Dominic, the journalist who'd once interviewed Andre for a glossy feature titled The Man Who Has It All, uploaded a new exposé. The article was thorough, cold, and devastatingly precise. In a confidential file obtained from medical and legal sources, it began, Kendra Cruz's fertility reports were deliberately misrepresented during her marriage to CEO Andre Cruz. Records confirm that Andre filed for divorce 3 weeks after receiving test results proving his wife's fertility was perfectly healthy, contradicting his long-standing claim that infertility ended their marriage. Attached were scanned documents. Kendra's medical records stamped excellent ovarian reserve. Andre's signature on the lab's request forms. His private emails to the divorce attorney. We'll keep this narrative clean. The infertility angle protects both of us. The internet didn't need more. It devoured everything. By 8 a.m., Andre Cruz was trending in 15 countries. Stock analysts appeared on live broadcasts with grim expressions. Investors publicly distanced themselves. Employees scrubbed his name from their profiles. Screens across the world replayed footage from the baby shower. Kendra's calm smile, the children's laughter, Andre's shock. The captions beneath the clips turned poetic. The woman he called barren gave birth to his truth. She didn't expose him. The truth did. Marisol, caught in the crossfire, tried to defend him online. A single post that read, "There are two sides to every story." Within an hour, it was buried under hundreds of comments. The documents don't lie. "So, you married a liar." Karma doesn't miss. By noon, she deleted her social media entirely. Andre's world collapsed in layers. The first to fall were the investors. Board members who once praised his leadership now avoided his calls. Within hours, a statement was issued. Cruz Innovations will temporarily suspend Andre Cruz from executive duties pending investigation. The next to vanish were friends. The same men who toasted his success now texted polite condolences and disappeared. And the cruelest cut of all, silence from those who once admired him most. His inbox filled with automated cancellations, speaking events, contracts, endorsements. His calendar, once a fortress of importance, was now a graveyard of empty squares. Andre stood in his penthouse office, staring at the city below. The walls seemed to shrink with every notification. He'd always believed control was power, that if he stayed polished, composed, untouchable, the world would bow. But the truth didn't bow. It rose. Meanwhile, across the city, Kendra sat on her porch with her children. The morning light played through the trees, catching in their curls as they built castles from blocks. Her phone vibrated beside her on the table. She didn't reach for it. She didn't need to. Dominic had called the night before, asking if she wanted to go on record, to confirm or deny. Her answer had been simple. No comment. And yet her silence had become its own statement, louder than any press conference, more powerful than any accusation, because the world already knew. And for once, she didn't have to prove a thing. At 10:15 a.m., Andre's assistant, the last loyal one, entered his office with a grim look. The board has called an emergency vote. Andre didn't ask what for. He already knew. His hands trembled as he tried to knot his tie. For years, this ritual had been his armor. Today, it was just fabric choking the air from his throat. He looked at his reflection, the once flawless face of a man who had convinced the world he was invincible. Now the eyes staring back were bloodshot, lost, unfamiliar. He ripped the tie loose and muttered to himself, "They won't destroy me." But even he didn't believe it. The board meeting lasted 17 minutes. When it was over, Andre walked out with his title stripped, his access revoked, and his name already being replaced on the company website. He drove without direction, ending up parked near the coast, where glass towers met gray water. For the first time in years, no one was waiting for him. No emails, no calls, just silence, heavy, mocking, merciless. He opened his phone and scrolled through the comments under his company's latest post. Thousands of strangers dissected his life with ruthless clarity. Gaslighter in a suit. He broke her, and she rebuilt herself into truth. The only thing infertile was his integrity. He dropped the phone. It clattered against the dashboard, the screen flickering like a dying pulse. In another part of the city, Dominic appeared live on a morning broadcast. He didn't speak with outrage, only with quiet certainty. "This isn't about gossip," he said. "It's about accountability. A powerful man manipulated truth for image, and the woman he discredited rose with grace instead of vengeance. That's the story." The anchor nodded. "And Kendra?" Dominic smiled faintly. She refused to comment. "But I think that says everything." By afternoon, every financial network, lifestyle show, and podcast was echoing the same narrative. The myth of Andre Cruz had ended. In boardrooms, men whispered cautionary tales. Don't build your success on someone else's pain. In living rooms, women replayed Kendra's calm voice, her composure, her dignity, and felt seen. Justice wasn't shouted. It simply arrived. That evening, Kendra's sister called. "Are you watching the news?" Kendra smiled faintly. "No, I'm watching my kids." Two of her children were chasing the youngest around the garden, their laughter spilling into the air. She watched them, living proof that truth outlasts cruelty. "Everyone's talking about you," her sister said. "They're calling you an inspiration." Kendra's voice was soft. "Then let them talk. The truth speaks louder than I ever could." She hung up, her heart strangely still. Not triumphant, not vengeful, just free. Because for the first time, she realized justice wasn't about destroying someone. It was about no longer needing to defend yourself. Across town, Andre sat in the dark, staring at a tablet glowing with Dominic's article. His empire was gone. His reputation was a relic. And the only thing left to face was himself. He closed the screen, the silence pressing in around him like penance. Kendra hadn't needed revenge. The truth had done her work for her. And as the city lights flickered outside, Andre finally understood what she meant that night on the terrace, when she said consequence. Because this wasn't karma, it was clarity. And clarity, he realized too late, is the sharpest justice of all. Still in the midst of the storm. Night draped the city in silence. The laughter from the party was long gone, replaced by the low hum of shame. Andre sat in his office, the glow from his monitor painting hollow light across his face. The door creaked open. Marisol stood there, no makeup, no smile, just trembling hands clutching her phone. "Andre," she whispered. He didn't look up. "What?" She hesitated, then stepped closer. "You need to know before it goes public." He finally turned, his eyes bloodshot. "Before what goes public?" She swallowed hard, voice barely holding together. "The baby. The tests came back." Andre's brows drew together, confusion turning to dread. "What tests?" She stared at the floor. "The DNA. I needed to be sure before you found out some other way." The silence that followed was sharp enough to cut air. "Andre," she said, breaking apart on his name. "The baby isn't yours." The words hung there, quiet, almost tender, but they detonated everything. Andre stood, slow and disbelieving. "What did you just say?" Marisol's voice cracked. "I didn't mean to lie. It happened before you and I were official. I thought it didn't matter. But now..." He stared at her. The woman he'd chosen to replace Kendra, to build his redemption story around, and all he could see was the same thing he'd once accused his ex-wife of being, a mistake that cost him everything. His breath hitched, anger twisting into something colder. Fear. He sank back into his chair, staring past her, his reflection broken in the glass wall behind. Marisol whispered, "I'm sorry," and walked away. The door closed with a soft click, and Andre, for the first time, realized he had built his empire, his image, and his pride on lies. And they were all finally coming home. The world had moved on. At least that's what the headlines said. The scandal that once set the internet on fire had faded into archive links and whispered afterthoughts. But for Kendra, the world had not just moved on. It had opened up. 6 months had passed. And for the first time in years, the air she breathed didn't carry the weight of someone else's story. The scene opens in a sunlit park on a late Saturday morning, the kind of golden calm that feels like forgiveness itself. Children's laughter drifted like music, the sky stretched wide and impossibly blue, and the earth smelled of grass and renewal. Kendra strolled along a winding path lined with cherry trees in bloom. The petals fluttered around her, catching in her hair like soft snow. Ahead of her, 3 small figures ran barefoot through the meadow, her triplets, their laughter echoing through the air. They chased butterflies as if joy were something that could be caught. Their giggles blended with the song of distant birds, and for a fleeting moment, everything felt still. Still. And right. Kendra's eyes softened as she watched them. Each step they took seemed to erase a fragment of the pain she once carried. The shame, the humiliation, the ache of believing she was broken, all of it had dissolved into something far simpler. Peace. She sat on a nearby bench beneath the blossoms. Her hair glowed amber in the sunlight, her navy dress replaced with soft white linen that moved gently in the breeze. In her hands, she held a cup of coffee and a small notebook, though she hadn't written in it yet. She no longer needed to analyze her wounds to prove she'd healed. She was living proof. A shadow crossed the sunlight. "Still journaling your revolutions?" a familiar voice teased gently. Kendra looked up. Grady stood before her, tall, broad-shouldered, with the quiet steadiness of someone who built things that lasted. He wore a soft gray shirt, sleeves rolled to his elbows, and carried 2 cups of coffee. He had seen her long before he approached. His smile was kind, careful, like a man who knew how to approach strength without disturbing it. Kendra smiled. "Grady." He handed her one of the cups and sat beside her, their shoulders nearly touching, but not quite. "You look happy," he said simply. "I am," she replied, her gaze on her children still running through sunlight. "It took a long time to mean that when I said it." He studied her profile for a moment. "You've changed, you know." She tilted her head, half amused. "People keep saying that. Maybe I just stopped trying to be someone I'm not." "Maybe," he said softly. "You finally became who you were always meant to be." The wind carried a petal onto her lap. She picked it up, turning it between her fingers. Freedom feels strange at first, like learning to walk again after someone convinced you your legs were broken. Grady leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "I watched you fight for peace, Kendra. You didn't just survive. You redefined what surviving looks like." She smiled faintly. "Funny. I used to think survival meant keeping quiet. Now I think it means refusing to." He chuckled. "You don't have to fight anymore." "No," she said, shaking her head. "But I choose to live louder." A short silence followed, the kind that feels like understanding, not absence. The triplets' laughter echoed across the field again, and one of them shouted, "Mommy, look, butterflies!" Kendra waved, her eyes shining. "Careful with the wings, my loves," she called back. "Some things aren't meant to be caught, just admired." Grady watched her, admiration flickering in his eyes. "You speak like someone who finally knows the difference between holding on and letting go." She turned to him, smiling softly. "I didn't need revenge, Grady. I just needed freedom." He nodded slowly. "And now that you have it?" Kendra glanced at her children again. The sunlight glowed on their hair like halos of motion. "Now I build peace, brick by brick, morning by morning." Her voice grew quieter, thoughtful. "I used to want closure. I wanted him to apologize, to admit what he did. But I realized something." Grady waited. "You don't heal by hearing the words that broke you," she said. "You heal by writing new ones, in your own voice." The truth of it lingered between them. They sat there for a long while, saying little. Grady's presence was easy, steady in a way that didn't demand attention. He didn't try to fill her silence or fix her story. He simply existed beside her, grounding her in a way she hadn't known she needed. After a while, she asked quietly, "Why do you always show up?" He smiled. "Because you always deserved someone who would." Kendra's breath hitched, not from sadness, but from the startling gentleness of being seen. "And if I'm not ready for more, then I'll wait," he said simply. "Peace is worth waiting for." She looked down at the coffee cup warming her hands. "You make it sound so easy." Grady laughed softly. "It isn't, but neither is building a bridge, and you've been crossing one your whole life." Her lips curved into a real smile, unguarded and luminous. "Maybe I'll stop halfway and enjoy the view." He nodded. "Good. You've earned it." Later, As the sun began to set, Kendra gathered her children. They ran into her arms, breathless, cheeks flushed with joy. She hugged them tightly, the weight of their small bodies grounding her in the present. "Time to go, butterflies," she whispered against their hair. They giggled and linked their tiny hands with hers as they walked back toward the path. Grady walked beside them, quiet, watchful, not leading, not following, just there. Kendra turned to him. "Thank you for today." He smiled softly. "For coffee? For reminding me that peace doesn't need witnesses." They reached the edge of the park, where the city's hum began to rise again. Cars, voices, the endless rhythm of life continuing. Kendra paused, looking back once more. Her children were still chasing shadows in the fading light, their laughter spilling like music. She inhaled deeply, the air cool against her skin. 6 years ago, she'd stood on a terrace begging for someone to see her worth. Now she carried it in her every step. Freedom wasn't a destination. It was the way she walked now, steady, barefoot, unashamed. That night, after the children fell asleep, Kendra sat by her window watching the stars blur into the horizon. The world outside was still noisy with judgment, but her world, her small, precious, rebuilt world, was quiet. She opened her journal for the first time in months. On the first page, she wrote, "I thought he destroyed me, but all he did was break the cage." She smiled, closed the book, turned off the light. And somewhere deep inside, the universe exhaled with her, as if relieved to see one more woman finally free. Her laughter, the kind that had once been silenced, now filled the night air. Unforced, alive, untamed. A sound of reclamation. Because peace isn't found when the world stops talking. It's found when you stop needing to explain. The world had forgotten the scandal, but it had not forgotten her. The camera opens on a sunrise sweeping across the city skyline. A city once drowned in gossip, now bathed in quiet light. The kind of dawn that doesn't just begin a new day, it begins a new era. And at the heart of that rebirth stood Kendra. It had been 2 years since the baby shower that broke the internet. 2 years since she stood in front of hundreds of people and shattered a man's empire with a single smile. But now, she was building something entirely different. Not from anger, not from vengeance, but from vision. A marble plaque gleamed beneath the morning light. The Phoenix Project for Women Rising from the Ashes of Emotional Abuse reporters filled the steps outside as the camera swept upward. The building itself was breathtaking, all glass and light, with a great bronze phoenix spreading its wings across the facade. It wasn't a charity, it was a sanctuary. Part counseling center, part legal aid, part financial literacy hub. Inside, the lobby hummed with quiet purpose. Women of every age and background walked the halls, some nervous, some hopeful, all searching for the same thing, a way to begin again. Kendra moved among them, not like a celebrity, not like a savior, but like a survivor who had learned the language of starting over. She stopped to greet a young woman clutching an application. "First day?" Kendra asked softly. The woman nodded, tears in her eyes. "I left him last week." Kendra's smile was gentle, steady. "Good. That's not an ending, love. That's a beginning." Her words landed like sunlight after rain. The woman's breath hitched, then she smiled through the tears. The Phoenix Project wasn't built from pity. It was built from experience. Every program, every policy, every voice inside its walls was designed to help women rebuild the pieces they were told were worthless. And it worked. Within months, stories began to spread. Stories of women who'd found their courage again, who'd gone back to school, started businesses, written books, rebuilt families, and learned how to live without apology. The movement grew beyond Kendra's name. It became a wildfire of hope. That evening, she sat across from a reporter for an exclusive interview. Cameras glowed softly in the background, the city glittering through the tall windows behind her. The journalist smiled. "Kendra?" The world first met you as the woman everyone pitied, the ex-wife at the center of a public scandal. Now, they call you a global force for change. How did you go from being broken to being unstoppable? Kendra's lips curved, calm but radiant. I didn't go from broken to unstoppable, she said. I just stopped believing I needed to be unbroken to matter. The interviewer blinked. What do you mean? I used to think healing meant erasing what happened, Kendra explained, her gaze steady. But healing means carrying the scars and still walking forward. It means saying, yes, it happened, but it didn't end me. Her voice softened, but it filled the space with quiet command. I built the Phoenix Project for women like me. Women who were told their silence was grace, that endurance was love. But grace isn't quiet, and love isn't pain. Grace is standing back up. Love is the strength to walk away. The journalist nodded, visibly moved. You've become a symbol for empowerment, Kendra. What message do you want every woman listening to take from your story? She smiled, not the smile of victory, but of peace. That your worth doesn't depend on who hurt you. That being underestimated is not a curse, and it's a setup for your rebirth. The screen behind them lit up with the Foundation's logo, a phoenix rising in gold. A headline flashed across every major network within hours. Ex-wife who faced humiliation builds empire of hope. Clips of the interview spread across social media. Her words trended for days, shared, quoted, painted onto murals, printed on t-shirts, turned into classroom discussions and TED Talks. But Kendra didn't chase the attention. She never had. That night, after the cameras packed up, she stood alone on the terrace of her office. The city glittered below like a constellation of second chances. She looked down at her hands. The same hands that once trembled in humiliation now held purpose steady as glass. Her assistant stepped outside quietly. Ms. Kendra, they want to schedule another interview. Oprah's team just reached out. Kendra laughed softly. Tell them to wait. I promised my kids ice cream. Cut to another scene. A quiet penthouse, sleek and cold. Andre sat alone at his desk. The once powerful CEO now reduced to a relic in a corner office that no one visited. His nameplate was still there, but the company he'd built had been sold off in pieces. The blinds were drawn. The only light came from the flickering TV on the wall, replaying Kendra's interview. Her voice filled the room like sunlight creeping into a tomb. I didn't need revenge, she said on screen. I needed freedom. Andre's hand trembled as he reached for the remote, but he didn't turn it off. He couldn't. The camera lingered on his face, hollow, unshaven, eyes reflecting the very thing he'd once destroyed. Light. Behind him, awards gathered dust. Framed magazine covers, Forbes, GQ, Business Today, all once shouting his name in bold, now whispering mockery through silence. He leaned back in his chair, voice a cracked whisper. She really did rise. Outside his window, the city roared with life. But for him, there was only the echo of what he'd lost. Reputation, family, her. Meanwhile, Kendra's world was alive with motion. Her children, now older, confident, whole, ran through the halls of the Foundation, helping volunteers pack supplies for women leaving shelters. One of them paused by the bronze statue of the Phoenix. Mom? The little girl asked. Why a bird? Kendra knelt beside her. Because some things don't stay burned, she said softly. They rise higher than before. The child smiled. Like you? Kendra brushed her hair back. Like all of us. Later, Kendra stood on the balcony of her new home, a house overlooking the ocean, waves crashing like applause against the rocks below. Grady joined her, a gentle presence at her side. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. They watched the horizon, gold melting into violet. I used to think revenge would make me feel powerful, Kendra said quietly. But peace makes me feel infinite. Grady smiled, his hand finding hers. Then you finally won. She shook her head, eyes on the sea. Winning was never the goal. Becoming was. The ocean breeze caught her hair, lifting it like a banner. She turned toward the camera, breaking the fourth wall, her voice steady and strong, meant not for Andre, not for the world, but for every listener who ever needed to hear it. You are not defined by what broke you, she said. You are defined by what you build after. Her eyes glimmered with tears that never fell. Never let someone else write your ending, because endings aren't where the story dies, they're where it begins to mean something. The waves crashed, louder now, rhythm to her words. The final montage unfolds. Women at the Phoenix Project signing job offers, hugging their children, laughing through tears. Kendra walking through the halls, her triplets by her side. The bronze phoenix glowing in the sunset, wings reaching toward the sky. Her voice echoes one last time. Some stories begin in ruin, but if you have courage, if you have heart, ruin becomes rebirth. The screen fades to black, and her words remain. Never mistake quiet for weak. The calmest waters can drown empires. The music swells, soft, triumphant, endless.